11B, Councillor Hillier to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Chairman of the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee is not up to the job. She lacks the competence for this post, she does not seem to understand the role of scrutiny, and she seems to confuse her life as a former officer of this council.
Councillor Hillier, I'm sorry to stop you. It's my fault. I should have asked for a second. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Banger.
And she seems to confuse her life as a former officer of this council with that of a member. I'm sure Council agrees with the first sentence of this motion without demur. Those members who forced through an opposition order paper last May, I am sure believed they were putting in place a structure to keep the administration honest, to hold it to account, to make sure that the business of the administration serves the residents of the borough. On this committee, in this instance, that belief was misplaced. So far, the Housing and Growth Committee has met 3 times this year. At the first of these, we received a briefing on the spatial options for the core strategy. Not a report we were scrutinising, a briefing. This was the only matter discussed. The discussion for the forward work plan was thought to be insufficiently prepared. The chairman had to accept that members were not prepared to enter into a lengthy debate on a poorly prepared paper late into the night, and that the item was deferred for a discussion at a later meeting. The second meeting was given over entirely to the forward plan of the committee. The meeting took 2¼ hours to complete. Discussion moved backwards and forwards through the calendar and the topics for scrutiny with an absolute lack of clarity on what was to be achieved. During this discussion, the chairman proposed that the next meeting of the committee, which was planned as a plenary session for all members of the council, should be chaired by the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. Clearly, a meeting of the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee should be chaired by the chairman of that committee, or in their absence by the deputy chairman or another member of the committee, not by any other member of the council. The third meeting discussed the draft local plan statement of consultation. The chairman attempted to limit discussion on this important issue to 2 hours. Mr. Mayor, let me put it plainly. The chairman was prepared to give less time to discussing this item, 2 hours, than to the discussion for the forward work programme, 2¼ hours. And indeed, when the 2 hours had expired, the chairman tried to curtail discussion. It fell to other members of the committee to force a full discussion on the agenda item. It was not in the public interest to do otherwise. Mr. Mayor, 5 months into the municipal year, the committee has not discussed housing once. It has not discussed growth, but it has discussed how objections to the local plan could stifle growth. At each meeting, the chairman has been blown off course. It is clear to me that the chairman intends to concentrate on local plan issues. There is little evidence that she intends to scrutinise the wider work of the administration, but she does want to follow her own narrow agenda, in which she ascribes all the ills of the local plan to the UK's current membership of the European Union. However, that is not to say that the chairman is not prepared to go beyond her remit. At the last meeting, the chairman announced that she intends to invite a member of the Planning Inspectorate to a meeting to discuss a number of what-ifs in relation to the local plan. If this course of action is what is required, then it is not the work of the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee to facilitate it. Rather, that would be the remit of the Cabinet member with responsibility for planning. It appears that the chairman of the committee is intent on following her own agenda, not the agenda of the council. she must erroneously think that her own agenda is the only one in the public interest. When asked at the last meeting of this council, the chairman of the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee was asked if she felt her committee offered a value for money. In response, she answered in the affirmative. In my opinion, I feel she was misguided in this assessment, and that a more accurate answer would have been in the negative. Nothing has happened since that has altered my view, or been able to convince me that her continuing chairmanship of this committee is in the public interest. Mr. Mayor, the council cannot allow this situation to continue. I ask this evening that council supports me in suggesting a lack of confidence in the chairman of the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee, and therefore resolves that she be removed from her post and replaced by someone who understands the purpose of scrutiny. I urge council to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. Councillor Taggart. I defer my right to speak, Matt. I'll defer the right to speak. You can speak now.
I can speak later.
No,
I
you-
reserve the right to speak later.
I'm being advised, so hang on. You should know this, Councillor Baggott. This is the 15C, which Councillor Callaghan referred to. Second speech. When seconded a motion or amendment, a member must make their speech immediately after the proposer of the motion has made their speech. So on your feet.
Mr. Mayor, I'm only too happy to rise to support this motion. It's only a shame we don't have a working committee on the Constitution to get all these little things sorted out. Mr. Mayor, in a previous life, I was chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, and the one thing that I have always believed in is scrutiny first. I genuinely believe that strong scrutiny in any council is actually fundamental. And I have in the past had stand-up rows with colleagues about that belief. I also believe that scrutiny, and I articulated this last year, needs to move forward. It needs to be involved in policy and involvement. It needs to involve all members. And I did the best that I could last year to actually achieve those aims. This year, it's been a massive step back, in my opinion, for that particular committee. I have sat down and had a chairman deliver a 15 to 20 minute introductory speech about where it was that the committee should be going, which isn't involvement and inclusivity. It's setting out if it's setting out an agenda, I absolutely would respect that. When it's actually giving a political view, it's slightly detracting from what scrutiny is about. I have, and members across the room will know this because they've been there, those that are at the committee. And the reason I'm seconding this is because I think it's incumbent upon people who are sitting on that committee to be able to articulate the issues. I believe that member involvement in scrutiny is a priority. This chairman does not. And there are times where I've had to actually, not fight, that would be a little bit strong, but articulate strongly the fact that members and meetings should be had and members should be invited, and it should be clear that all members are invited, especially on issues to do with the local plan, for instance, green structure, green belt infrastructure and travellers. I don't think it's appropriate for any chairman on the night of a committee meeting to hand their members a brand new agenda and tell you that that's what you're talking to, because that's just not professional. It doesn't give the members an ability to actually read that thing. It doesn't give the members the ability to put any cogent input into that meeting, yet that's what we had. And I don't think that's right. The committee so far should be called the Local Plan Scrutiny Committee, because as Councillor Hillier has said, we've not looked at anything else. I appreciate that only as a member of that committee, I'm not the one that makes the decisions, that's down to the chairman. But I have articulated at every meeting that I believe that our tenants in this borough are not being accorded the input that I believe they should have, and yet the chairman was prepared to be fobbed off by an officer report saying, we'll get round to it, effectively, and I don't think that's appropriate. I was aghast when I found out the chairman had actually asked officers to contact DCLOG to see whether we could extend the time frame for the local plan, because that isn't facilitative, that's actually cutting across the cabinet member of the council's responsibility. And my view is if we were to do that, that's a council decision, not the member of a committee, any committee. And I'll be saying that if a member of any other scrutiny committee was asking officers to circumvent the role of council and cabinet. I was also concerned when and I'm paraphrasing here, when we were informed about the planning inspectorate, initially it was to ask the planning inspectorate what would happen if we didn't have a local plan. And officers had to caution at the time that the wording there is very, very delicate, because again, this is a council decision whether we have a local plan or not. And to give the inference at a committee meeting that the council was minded not to have a local plan could have legal consequences. And officers intervened at that particular time to point out that the wording needs to be very, very carefully worded were a member of the planning committee to come. The work programme setting was one of the ones where we had a brand new agenda, and I'm sorry to say, it was a car crash. Because it wasn't so much as members sitting around to decide a work programme, rather than being browbeaten into what the work plan should be from the chairman's point of view. I'm winding up, Chairman. I've had emails from attendees of the public regarding the meetings and how they've been conducted, actually stating their issues with the fact that, is there another agenda at work there? And that isn't what scrutiny is about. It should be apolitical, agenda-free, working for the good of this council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Babbitt. Councillor Davis.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry?
Point of order.
Certainly.
Rule 15, paragraph 22, disorderly conduct by a member.
Can we just check that? I'm sure you've got the right one.
I have, I'm confident.
Can you explain them?
I've sat here this evening hearing comments from Councillor Linda Hodge. When the mover of the motion, Councillor Hillier, was talking, she said, what a total prat. She's continued that type of abusive words and language throughout the meeting, and whilst Councillor Baggett was speaking, I don't believe it's appropriate. Members of the public are present, I can hear it, they may, and I'll ask that she refrain from such language.
When you tell libelous statements,
I note, Councillor Davis, I note your point of order, and I'm sure Councillor Alford has heard what you said and will refrain from any remarks in the future. Councillor Turner wishes to speak. Anyone else? So I've got one more speaker after Councillor Turner. Sorry?
Okay, thanks very much. Mr. Mayor, you will have got the tone from the Conservative benches. This is not a personal attack on the character of lovely Linda Hodge. I know from working with Councillor Hodge, Hodge, that she is dedicated, she is focused, she is talented, and she's smart. But what you've heard tonight is none of those things. And that's the shame of it all. Because the council has a big job on its hands through the growth in housing scrutiny. Now, I wasn't in favour, and nor was the Conservative group, of putting another scrutiny panel in. But once again, we've heard from this unholy alliance that it was absolutely essential to benefit the residents of Basildon. But clearly, evidence and the track record that we've heard tonight, it hasn't been beneficial at all. And if we really want to portray it as it is, let's call it what it is. And that is a local plan scrutiny committee. But in doing that, you do a disservice when all you want to do is offer up political argument of your persuasion. You know, the local plan is big business for all of us. We need a local plan. And you can call me Bob the Builder, but what the resident doesn't know is that I'm the best person for this job. Because I'll give you the minimum amount of housing, I'll give you the maximum amount of infrastructure, I'll give you all what you want, and employment land as well. Now, scrutinise that if you really want to, but don't throw brickbats in the way through a political agenda, and that is what we've had, unfortunately, from Councillor Hodge. Now, she's done her office and this council a disservice, and that, in any circumstances, is a shame. But because of the enormous talent that we've got in Councillor Hodge, it just magnifies it. And it is a shame that we've got into that situation, because there's so much good work that's come out of scrutiny. We've had task and finish groups, cross-party agreements. It's been a real, dare I say, success over a number of years. Before, when we were a majority administration, it was good. It got better as a minority because suddenly we're all pulling together. But here is a manifesting itself as something that isn't quite up to it. And I think that's the shame of it all. If you sweep all that aside, what have we actually got out of 3 committees and a chunk of time that we've actually wasted? Because that's effectively what we've done. There's nothing good that's come out of that scrutiny committee. And you've had cross-party members sitting there asking the chair to do something else, something different, and it hasn't been done. That narrow political agenda is not what scrutiny is all about. And yes, we all have affiliations, and that influences us in our thought processes. But when you get into scrutiny, you do have to put that aside. And I'm speaking from experience because I was the first chairman of scrutiny. And that was difficult. And that was in turbulent times, when you had to really think seriously. We just brought in scrutiny. It was about, well, how do you put your political views aside? But we did it. And we did it well. And it's gone on from where I picked up to much bigger and better things. Especially here. But when you examine, when you put this under the microscope, and you take a cold, hard look of what we've had here, it is very, very short of the standard that this council requires. And that can't be allowed to go on. We need a change of office, we need a change of chairman, we need a change of direction if we are to do the residents proud and actually give them what we are here for, and that is a voice, value for money, and a way forward through all of this mess, because out there are critics that would only love to bring this process down. We can't afford that. If it's not this administration delivering a local plan, it will be another one. Somebody else will be able to do all that. But what we have to do is to plan it and plan it well, with scrutiny that's found on that account. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Turner. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm extremely disappointed in Councillors Hillier and Baggott for bringing this baseless motion to Council. In the past, we have given consideration to the removal of those positions of power for legitimate reasons, such as, based on facts and evidence, we debated the removal of Carol Morris, the Chair of Planning, because she abused her powers and rubber-stamped both Dry Street and the Ballards walk developments, using delegated powers, despite there being objections from other committee members and a great deal of public interest in both applications. Also, based on facts and evidence, we debated the removal of Councillor Sargent as a cabinet member for the environment and the community, because following the well-publicised objections by the 5 Links residents about the renumbering, which she then pursued through the courts. These debates at Council were founded on facts and evidence. That evidence was readily available to members by speaking to residents, reading press coverage, and by substantive acts like signed documents and court cases. Yet here we are debating the removal of the chair of the Housing and Growth Committee on hearsay of 2 disgruntled Tory committee members. No evidence is available for members to determine this decision. No abuse of power has taken place. No complaints from residents. Nothing. In fact, only 21 members in this room out of the 42 have attended one or more of the 3 meetings held to date. We are assured by the Chief Exec that this is a valid motion, despite the fact that members are being asked to vote on a personal attack on an elected member, which clearly breaks the councillors' code of conduct and the Nolan principles. It's nothing more than a personal vendetta and hearsay. I'm glad decisions on our finances are not dealt with in the same way. And I'm sure the public will be bemused and concerned that this motion has been ruled as valid and is being debated at taxpayers' expense. Let's look at the wording of the motion. This council believes that the public interest is served by a strong and effective scrutiny function. Up until last year, this council was probably the only council in the country that had a scrutiny function not chaired by opposition members. In other words, there had been no scrutiny of executive decisions in Basildon for years. The Tories clearly resent the fact that since May, the 3 new scrutiny meetings held in public about matters that interest the public most are being discussed in public. This is alien to the Tories, who are used to railroading things through, and it's clearly grating on our Tory members. Hillier to the Standards Board, backed by a letter of complaint from a member of the public who was in attendance at the committee meeting. This was regarding grandstanding, time-wasting behaviour of the 2 Tory members on the committee. What on earth must our residents think of such behaviour? This kind of behaviour is not acceptable and should be reserved for the playground, which is clearly where Councillors Hillier and Baggott think they are. Mr Mayor, I think we all know in this room what a load of nonsense this motion is, and Councillor Hillier should be made accountable for his behaviour and failure to contribute at the committee in any constructive way. Moreover, he has attended with the sole purpose of disrupting the proceedings and causing mayhem. How can his childish behaviour be in the best interest of our residents? And how has he not brought this council into disrepute? If anything, I think Councillor Allport Hodge should be applauded for refraining to react to such petty behaviour. And the leader of the council should note her inclusive chairing skills. We must vote on the facts in front of us and not allow personal issues to impair the judgment of this council. Yes. Without dwelling on this motion anymore, I move, Mr Mayor, that the question now be put as in 15K 1A in the Constitution. Thank you.
I don't think there's been sufficient debate at this point in time, because I've got other speakers. Councillor Mrs Norris.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What a bare-faced cheek Councillor Ellis has to say that the removal of people has been based on facts, and this is purely a personal attack, and yet how long ago was it there was a vote to remove Councillor Holman? And what reasons were given? None. Well, really. And as for the slanderous comments about myself, I have to defend myself and state that all my actions were taken within the Constitution and legal advice was taken to ensure that they were. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Blake.
Yeah, some of the points was actually well made there. I was going to mention myself, Councillor Ellis actually saying you know, that this is an attack on a person. I mean, they just got rid of Councillor Hollyman for absolutely no reason. And I asked them to give a reason. I made it quite clear what has he done wrong, and nothing come back. So I just wonder what you've done that on, because it's politics, probably. Yeah, you're nodding. So obviously it's reason politics, and however, it was a motion committed. So, and I know Councillor Allport-Hodge hasn't spoken, but when somebody is guilty of something, of a crime, then what they actually do, they sit in there, we think so, because he's been so unfair to the people of this borough. So you actually do sit down and say no comment, time and time again, and things like that. So as far as I'm concerned, this motion, she should be got rid of. She's been proven not to be good at all. I could go into other issues, but I won't. I could have made it go on attack regarding Max Whitlock. I could go on attack regarding the equestrian centre, just undermine, but I won't. I will refrain from doing that. I won't lower myself so much to embarrass her and show her up to her leadership, which is insufficient. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Blake, just to remind members, Councillor Ellis, you moved the question report. You cannot do that if you've just spoken at the end of the speech. Another member can rise to move the question report, but not yourself at that point in time. Councillor Ward has moved the question report.
You didn't hear it, Chairman.
You said that there hasn't been sufficient debate.
No, that was then. You've got a second. Seconded. I am happy that's been sufficient at this point in time, because we're going to go over different ground and bring new information in otherwise, which is irrelevant. People understand the issues, and I think it's fair. All those in favour of the question be brought, please show. All those against? Against the question report. There's 2.5. Is anyone against the question report? No. Right. Abstentions? Quite a few. Councillor Heady, you get the opportunity to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just very quickly, Councillor Baggett quite rightly said that we believe on these benches that scrutiny is fundamental. Councillor Turner said that we should be giving the residents a voice, not following a narrow political agenda. Councillor Ellis suggested that this motion was baseless. I think the evidence that I presented verbally, and Councillor Baggett presented verbally, does not mean it is baseless. There is a base upon which we can make this decision. And it certainly is in evidence that by inviting or writing to the planning inspector and writing to the Department of Local Government, Councillor Allport-Hodge has exceeded and abused her position. And we were accused of it being disgruntled. I'm not disgruntled. I'm concerned that the public interest has not been followed on this committee. And if this were going to be a personal attack, we would be bringing in personalities. None of us have brought that in. We have simply said that your ability as a chairman has failed abysmally. And Councillor Ellis went on to say that this was the only council in the country where the administration party, our last party, held a scrutiny. What evidence has he produced for that? Absolutely none whatsoever. And what is more concerning is that Councillor Ellis has indicated in public, in front of this council, that I am to be reported to the Standards Board, and I believe my influence, Councillor Baggett. Now, if, Mr. Mayor, we are to be reported to the Standards Board, that is surely something for the monitoring officer to deal with, not for it to be publicly announced in this meeting on this occasion. And I think that behaviour is despicable, and it's below Councillor Ellis's standard. Right? And I think that the other thing that Councillor Morris has indicated, that any decisions that she made were within the Constitution. The decisions that Councillor Allport made have been outside her remit. Mr Mayor, I don't think I can say any more, except to say, and remind you that in fact, I think you also have attended all three of the meetings. You will know whether Councillor Barron and I have been provocative or disruptive or what, or do you think that we have been trying to do what is in the public interest in holding the chairman of the committee to account? I think that's what we've been doing. I therefore ask that the council vote on this and support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. The motion is as on the order paper. All those in favour, please show. Okay. All those against, please show. The motion is carried. I need now to ask for a nomination for the chairmanship of the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee from the existing members. We have no nominations. I apologise.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Baggott.
Any other nominations? No, sorry, no more nominations. Councillor Baggott will be chairman of the Housing and Growth Scrutiny Committee. Motion 11C.